There was a time when Prince Andrew seemed untouchable. As the son of Queen Elizabeth II, he lived surrounded by privilege, luxury, and a level of service that most people could only imagine. But today, that image looks very different. Instead of being seen as one of the most powerful members of the royal family, he has become one of its biggest sources of controversy. And now, reports surrounding his latest move have sparked fresh questions about just how far his status has fallen. But what really happened behind closed doors? And why were royal staff reportedly so reluctant to work for him? The answers paint a picture that is far more dramatic than a simple change of address. For years, Andrew's name has been linked with scandal, criticism, and growing public frustration. Many people believe his downfall was entirely self-inflicted. Critics have described him as entitled, demanding, and convinced that the normal rules simply did not apply to him. As public opinion toward both Andrew and the monarchy continued to shift, pressure inside the royal family reportedly grew stronger. At the same time, support for the monarchy itself was said to be slipping, raising even bigger questions about what the institution should look like in the future. But while those debates played out in public, another battle was quietly unfolding behind palace walls. According to reports, the tension exploded the moment preparations began for Andrew's move from Royal Lodge. What should have been a straightforward relocation allegedly turned into a heated confrontation. Staff members reportedly found themselves dealing with an angry prince who viewed the entire move as a personal insult. Voices were said to have been raised almost as soon as the first moving boxes appeared. Those present allegedly witnessed a side of Andrew that palace insiders had whispered about for years but rarely discussed openly. And that was only the beginning. For decades, Andrew had lived in a world where almost every detail of daily life was handled by someone else. Royal Lodge wasn't just another house. It was a massive 30-room residence designed for comfort, privacy, and constant support. The estate reportedly relied on gardeners, butlers, chefs, cleaners, and security staff working together every day to keep everything running smoothly. That lifestyle had become his normal. It was simply the way life had always been. But here's where everything changed. The property waiting for him was nothing like Royal Lodge. Instead of a grand estate, reports claimed Andrew was being moved into Marsh Farm, a 5-bedroom farmhouse near the village of Wolverton. It had reportedly stood empty for years and needed extensive work before anyone could comfortably live there. Some descriptions were particularly harsh, calling it neglected, outdated, and sitting close to marshland that was vulnerable to flooding. Even before Andrew arrived, workers reportedly had to replace flooring, install new carpets, improve security, and completely upgrade the internet connection. A tall security fence was also added around the property to protect his privacy. Yet despite all that effort, reports claimed Andrew remained deeply unhappy. For someone accustomed to royal residences with endless space, moving into a farmhouse with only 5 bedrooms reportedly felt like a dramatic downgrade. Some insiders even describe it as the smallest home he had occupied since his younger days living in Buckingham Palace. To many people, 5 bedrooms still sounds like enormous luxury. But from Andrew's perspective, according to those reports, it represented a humiliating step backwards. And instead of quietly accepting the change, he was said to have pushed back almost immediately. That's when the story became even more surprising. According to palace insiders, Andrew didn't simply want improvements to the house itself. He reportedly wanted his entire lifestyle preserved. Despite losing many of his official duties and royal privileges, reports claimed he still expected a personal chef, a housekeeper, a gardener, a butler, a driver, and full-time security protection. Some accounts even suggested he wanted unrestricted access across the wider Sandringham estate, rather than remaining limited to the immediate area around his new home. If those reports are accurate, King Charles had very different plans. Rather than approving a full household dedicated solely to Andrew, the king reportedly chose a much simpler arrangement. Instead of private staff available at all times, Andrew would reportedly receive shared support from existing Sandringham employees whenever necessary. Permanent staff was said to be reduced to little more than a valet and a chef, while other services would only be provided when available. Compared to the large household Andrew had enjoyed for years, it represented a dramatic reduction. And according to reports, that decision became another major source of frustration. But perhaps the biggest problem wasn't the smaller staff. It was finding anyone who actually wanted the job. As preparations for the move continued, estate managers reportedly sent an unusual message to employees. Staff members would not be forced to work for Prince Andrew if they felt uncomfortable doing so. That single decision immediately attracted attention because such flexibility was said to be almost unheard of within royal households. It suggested that management understood just how controversial Andrew had become, even among the people working behind palace walls. According to several reports, some employees had already decided they wanted nothing to do with him. Others were reportedly worried about his public reputation or concerned about stories describing his alleged temper and demanding personality. Some long-serving workers, who had spent years around Andrew, were even said to have declined the opportunity to move with him altogether. Rather than relocating to Marsh Farm, they simply chose to step away. That alone spoke volumes. One palace source reportedly summed up the situation with a comment that quickly caught public attention. For perhaps the first time in his life, Andrew might actually have to answer his own front door. It was a simple image, but it perfectly captured how dramatically his circumstances appeared to be changing. A prince who had spent decades surrounded by servants now faced a much quieter life with far fewer people handling everyday tasks. But if you think that was the strangest part of this story, what happened next would surprise almost everyone. Among the most unusual details to reappear during the move were Andrew's famous collection of stuffed teddy bears. For years, stories had circulated about his remarkable collection, but many people dismissed them as exaggerated palace gossip. Then former staff members began sharing remarkably similar accounts. According to those claims, Andrew owned 72 teddy bears, each with its own exact position on his bed. They weren't simply placed wherever there was space. Every bear reportedly had a specific location that had to be followed with complete precision. Some wore miniature sailor uniforms collected from different parts of the world, while two favorites reportedly sat on small mahogany chairs beside the bed. Former maid Charlotte Briggs claimed new employees even received detailed training explaining how each teddy bear should be arranged. To avoid mistakes, staff reportedly relied on a laminated guide showing the correct layout. Former Royal Protection Officer Paul Page later supported similar claims, alleging that Andrew became angry whenever even one bear was placed incorrectly. To outsiders, the routine sounded almost unbelievable. Yet for staff responsible for maintaining the room, it reportedly became another demanding task that could not be ignored. And as moving day finally arrived, even stranger details began attracting public attention.